casting a vision, large enough where my team can fit their dreams inside of that vision has been huge. And consistently recasting the vision to the team is something that I've had to learn, because, you can cast the vision at the beginning, but you have to be the person that is driving that vision, and that's consistency.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Business Aspirin. I'm your host, Clint Junell, a podcast where we try to talk to entrepreneurs and business owners and deal with their pains to help you from having the same pain. I'm your host, Clint Junell. Today with me, I have Jonathan Brosher with Better Roofing and Restoration out of the Tampa area. Jonathan, how are you, my friend?
Good. Excited to be here.
Good, man. Glad to have you. So, looked a little bit about your history and kind of realized that you didn't start off in roofing and haven't really been in roofing very long. So let's talk about your story. Talk about how you grew up and how you got to where you are in this space currently.
Well, honestly, I never grew up thinking I'd be in roofing at all. It was kind of something where the next thing kind of led me to the next. I was an athlete in college. I graduated from St. Leo University, right out here in the Tampa area. I had a sports business degree. I was interested in getting into sports management, working for a professional team in the back office. I wanted to be a sports agent. So as I started getting through my degree, I kind of realized that the sports industry wasn't really something for me. The pay wasn't really there. And I was working through Lowe's. I worked a little bit with the Rays in my last year. And I kind of was like, I don't really see the opportunity here. And when you're a player and as an athlete, you kind of think, well, if I'm not going to make it professionally, then maybe if I get into like the back office, that would be similar to being a player, and it's just not the case. So as I got into my last year, I started selling cars, and I was really successful selling cars. In my first couple of months, I sold 20 plus cars. Every single month, I was a top sales guy. And then as I started moving through that, I was like, I think sales is something that I can really scale. And I felt like that was really my sweet spot. So I was making good money selling cars. I was finishing out my internship. And then I had a buddy that was actually selling roofs, and he was like, hey, why don't you come and try selling roofs? And I was like, I'd never heard about roofing sales. I never had really a construction background. So, but he was telling me about one guy, making all this money, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay. I went out and I interviewed. I ended up walking into this company called Gale Force Roofing at the time. I saw one of the top sales reps come in, and he would pull up in a BMW i8. And I ended up asking one of the HR ladies, does he make a lot of money? She's like, yeah, he makes, multiple six figures. And I had a conversation with him, and I kind of decided, well, if he can do it, I can. So I took the leap. I got out of car sales, and then I started selling roofs, and that was in 2019. And then from 2000, go ahead.
Well, so in 2019, you're selling roofs. Are you selling roofs locally? Are you chasing storms throughout the country?
I was selling roofs locally in the Tampa market. Yeah, I've been selling in this market for almost 6 years. So I started selling with that company. I was really successful with them. I kind of got the pitch. I kind of got it down. In my first couple months, I began to be a top rep with them. And then I started having some issues I was there for about a year and a half. And then I started having some issues with that sales manager. He was never a roof sales guy, kind of trying to switch up my process. And I had some issues internally with the company. And then I ended up getting fired. I believe at the time, maybe, 100 projects still ready to be built and paid on that I've sold, and, didn't see any of that money. So I had a buddy that was actually starting up a roofing company, a complete startup at the time that I got fired. And I went and I started working for him immediately. And the timing was perfect because right after I got on with him, Hurricane Ian hit down south. And then that storm I did chase down in the Fort Myers, Cape Coral area. It was an hour and a half drive for me, so I was commuting daily. But that was my first hurricane. I started working that. I had a great relationship with him. I worked with him for about 3 years. I helped him build the Tampa branch that he has. He has one in Jacksonville as well. And then I made an offer to get my license and run his Tampa branch. He lived in Jacksonville, and I was kind of already operating it myself and wanted some equity, and he could stay up in Jacksonville and I'll run the Tampa branch, and he declined that offer. So at that point in time, I kind of felt like I was ready to go do it on my own. So I ended up getting my license and then started Better Roofing.
Yeah, and that was when?
I started Better Roofing in August of 2024. We've been in business for a year and a half. And I ended up, and what was great for me, the timing was I started the company, and 2 months later, Hurricane Milton came through Tampa. So we got a real good kickstart right off the bat. I had a investor and a partner that worked with me that was able to give me some money to get started. And I was pitching him 6 months before I ended up getting my license. I'm saying I'm going to get my license. This is how we're going to operate. Everything else in between. And he believed in me, and he's a partner with me today. And when the hurricane came through in his neighborhood, we replaced over 30 roofs.
Nice. Perfect. That's a great way to start, right?
Yeah,
So let's talk a little
absolutely.
bit about then. When did you finish college?
I finished college at the beginning of 2020.
2020.
2020.
So then in 5 years, 5.5, almost 6 years now, you've gone from being in college to multiple different opportunities to now owning and running your own restoration company and roofing company. And so a lot of people would say, like, you're too young, you can't do that, right? What's your position in regard to, because that mentality is going to be out there in the restoration space and in the business world, but you've obviously been successful doing it. So how do you respond to that?
I would say, in this day and age, it's more about wisdom and experience that supersedes age. I've worked with a lot of people that are much older than me, and they run a lot less successful organizations, and it's because there's a new way of doing things. Right now, we operate on technology, AI, and this newer generation of entrepreneurs that's coming up really does have the upper hand against the older generation. And I always leverage technology. I always leverage AI in regards to getting people that respect me. When you really are successful in sales and running your business, the respect kind of comes along with that. It's a byproduct of that, I believe. And being somebody who says you're going to do something when you say you're going to do it, I have meetings here every Monday at 9 a.m. I'm very disciplined. We run a tight ship. And by making sure that I hold up to what I say I'm going to do is how I build respect with my team and my sales guys. And obviously a lot of my team is younger sales guys like my age. So, we have a very tight knit relationship, but also my partner is older. So I kind of get a little bit of tenure respect by being partnered with him. It's definitely an asset by being with him. And then, because there is obviously people that look at me and say, you're young, do you have the experience to be able to handle this kind of company? But the reality was when I was selling, I was already running my own business. I treated sales as me being a business owner. So the transition from sales to business owner wasn't as bad as some people might think because I was already doing the material orders. I was already taking care of the customer from A to Z.
Sure.
So it was a very easy transition from the sales to the ownership role.
And that's nice to be able to, kind of have some experience that you're getting paid to develop and grow and learn about how to do your business. What are some key things that you've learned? Like you said, you played ball in college, right? So played college baseball and then wound up in the baseball world in an internship. You were never actually employed in the baseball world?
As a player or a back office?
Either.
No. So no, I worked with the Rays as a raffle ticket salesperson. So during the game, I would sell the raffle tickets. That was technically my first sales job.
Okay.
And that was an internship / sales job. And that was really the one thing I did in the sports world before I decided it wasn't for me.
Sure. So, but you had an opportunity to be around the business side of things and see that sales, and you had
Correct.
a chance to be a part of a team in, growing up playing ball and playing college baseball. So what experiences did you take from those environments that you think you've brought into your current business?
100% for me was dealing with failure. And baseball is a game of failure, and sales is a game of failure as well. And being able to learn from every time I had an at bat, what did I do wrong there? How can I make that adjustment so I can get a hit the next at bat or whatever? That was huge for me because when I got into sales, real sales, which I believe was car sales, my first strikeouts I knew only led me to my next home run. And definitely being able to cope with failure was the number one thing that sports taught me. And, my brother works with me as a salesperson, and he was a professional baseball player. Every single person on my sales team played baseball or some sport or was an athlete at some level. And what they bring over is work ethic, and they bring competition. These guys, they want to grind. They're hustlers. They want to be the best in the division. I look at the Tampa market as my division. I want to be the best in my division. So definitely sports taught me that competitive edge, grinding, putting in the reps, and going out and putting in the input, not worrying about the output. If I get the input in and if I put in the reps, if I take the ground balls, if I hit off the tee, the output and the numbers are going to be a byproduct of that.
I love it. Right. I think the reality is, growing up in the sports world and then having a bunch of friends in the sports world myself, and then having my kids, my oldest being and my youngest being 9. coming through sports, there's so many lessons associated with sports that they have to learn how to navigate. And one is exactly what you're saying, which is the work ethic and the discipline and the, grind, and learning how to navigate the failure side of it. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But the reality is it does help shape and form who you become, and learn how to deal with, the rejections on the sales side, the
Absolutely.
problems, things happen on the business side. And when you're trying to navigate getting the funds in on work that you've completed to try to get, projects paid and employees paid and all those things, I think it really does help build some resilience in all of that.
Yeah, and one thing on that is what works in my culture is for our sales team is we have a team bonus. So we have our individual monthly bonus, and then we have a team bonus that if we get X amount of deals in this month, everybody gets paid. And that really ups the culture as a team, and it kind of brings that relation to when they were back and we were all back playing sports. And yeah, we wanted our individual stats to be the best. We wanted to start. Obviously, we wanted to ride the bench. But when we had that team goal in mind of winning that championship or making playoffs or whatever it was, it brought up the culture for everybody. So
Sure.
incentivizing the team as a team bonus. So if we hit this as a team, we'll get to where we need to be. Then at the end of the month, everyone's in the chat. Who's got a deal? We're almost 2 or 3 away from this bonus. That's been huge in getting the culture. And kind of giving everybody that feeling that they're back playing sports, like they're back as a kid playing that game that they used to love.
Sure. It gives them an outlet too, right? And it becomes a numbers game for them. And it is a game. At some level, part of sales is a game. And it's learning how to navigate that next step and understanding, okay, well, if I make enough calls, if I knock on enough doors, or if I'm in the right places at the right time, enough times, something's going to go right for me. Correct. And that's, valuable in terms of that lesson. I've told my kids on a regular basis, like, what's funny is, like, being in DFW, I'm sure Tampa Bay is kind of the same way. I know some hockey families out of the Tampa Bay market as well. And the mentality around sports now is everybody's going pro, right? Oh, your kid's I'm going pro. Like, I'm putting all this time in, doing all these private lessons and doing all these things to go pro. And the reality is most never will. Most are never even going to play college like you did, right? It's going to fizzle out before it gets there. And so if that doesn't happen, then what have you learned from your sport? Have you learned how to be a good teammate? Have you learned how to have good character, how to be resilient? And I think that's important that we, teach these things as opposed to, where you're going to be awesome and be successful. Somebody does, make it to the World Series. Somebody does win the Stanley Cup. And it's going to be somebody. It's just whether or not it's going to be you or your kid or whatever the case may be. And I think it's important that people understand there's still an insane amount of value you can get out of team sports, regardless of whether or not you make it to the ultimate level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say that my brother is by far, he's my most successful salesperson so far. He literally came on right at the end of his career. It was either I go play professional in Puerto Rico. He played 10 years, 6 years with the Mets, 4 years independently. And he had an offer to go play winter ball in Puerto Rico. And the storm hit. And, he was looking for that outlet that he could replace, professional sports with that he's been playing his whole life and then come into this. And he skyrocketed because it just translated. So, yeah, to your point, that worked out well.
Yeah, it's super great. And the reality is, especially in the case of your brother, most of the guys that I know still had to have something to do when it was all said and done anyway, right? So what is that thing that's going to lead them to still get that rush and high that they get from competing and provide financially for them? And I think you're onto something. I like the fact that your whole team is former players. Is that intentional, or is that just how it worked out because of where you are and who you are?
I would say it's a little bit of both. We've had such a wide, we grew up playing in the Tampa area. So our network has always been athletes. We've always hung out with athletes. So when I started up the company, the first people in my network to recruit was athletes. It was either former sales guys or athletes. Basically, it's 4 of the guys are ex-athletes. The other 2 are ex-car sales. And then that was just our network of the people that we knew. And I've noticed in my sales career before I became an owner was those were the best performing people. I've always felt that I wasn't interested in anybody with past industry experience. And I wanted people to come in fresh and just with work ethic, grind, and discipline and the hunger to compete. And that's all that's really necessary in the sales role of roofing.
Sure. And the rest of it can work itself out, right? I'm with you. Like we've on our restoration side, we've tried to be intentional about not necessarily bringing people in that have industry experience, because I don't do everything exactly the same way everybody else does. And I don't want to have to deprogram that, because sometimes that gets complicated. And so I think that's a smart move from your perspective to be cautious about that. Now, having some people with industry experience isn't terrible, depending on, what role they're playing, but, gives you the opportunity to kind of navigate some new things and learn how to make it work. And at some point, as you continue to grow and continue to develop, you're probably still going to have some people that do have industry experience
Yeah.
that come in and play a role in your company. And I think that's perfectly fine too, as long as you maintain your culture and your processes and the things that you want to do to grow your business the way you're trying to grow it.
Absolutely.
Some of the most important things that you've learned along this journey?
I would say for me, the most important thing I've learned was becoming a leader. In sales, you're working for yourself. You don't have a team under you, but now it's the ability to translate your sales ability to somebody else. And I think that being able to lead from the front has been the biggest thing that I have worked on and has become my biggest strength. Because for me, I'm only best equipped to help the person I used to be. So when I was a salesperson, the person that I couldn't learn from somebody that didn't have a proven history selling roofs in my market. So for me, I wanted to lead from the front. And that's the biggest quality that I've worked on. And I go out with all my new guys and I go on their first 3 leads myself. I close a deal in front of every single sales rep and I hand them the deals. Being a giver more than I take has 100% been something I've had to learn. I believe that I have an abundance mindset. I believe that if I give and these guys are working hard, that it's going to come back at some point in time. I understand how tough it could be to work in this industry, especially how long it takes for things to get paid out and stuff like that. So I want these guys to have faith in me that I'm in their corner, and I'm going to make sure that they're successful in selling and whatever they're looking to do. Also, is being able to not just be a leader but be the visionary, casting a vision, large enough where my team can fit their dreams inside of that vision has been huge, and consistently recasting the vision to the team is something that I've had to learn because you can cast the vision in the beginning, but you have to be the person that is driving that vision, and that's consistency. So consistency is by far, I would say, the number one lesson I've learned is being consistent day in, day out, and being a leader, especially at a young age. You have to be a leader.
Yeah, when you've got to be somewhat dominant in order to kind of control and bring people alongside you, right? If you're going to be young, then you've got to either be wicked smart or, wicked impressive because you got to get these people to follow you. I mean, your older brother, you're even saying, right, is working for you. Like that's not normal, right? And so, especially an older brother that's played professional sports, like there's some alpha mentality all there that says, like, Jonathan, you've done a good job becoming a leader and also being willing to sacrifice so that others can come alongside you and do things well. I think that's great. So let's talk about, you said being a leader, casting a vision, and being consistent. What steps have you taken? Like, what did you do to learn those things? How did those things come to you?
I would say, I learned them in my beginning stages of this company. I had a vision of what the company I was chasing after. So you could say it was, I guess, a chip on my shoulder from the first company. That was a sister company of $100 million roofing company in the United States. And I always would look at that company and I would say, I think I can do that. I can build a company to that level. And that was the vision that I was chasing. And I worked with that first company was a very large company. The second company was a startup. And I saw the difference between small and big. And I knew that I wanted to go big. And I knew that the pros and cons of working with both of those companies, but being able to write down in the beginning a clear vision. I had a 5-year plan that I presented to my partner of where we were going to be. And we've already almost gotten into year 3 within a year and 3 months of being there, and just absolutely verbalizing the vision and then taking massive action towards that. And, saying when I say I'm going to implement something, implementing it fast and implementing it smart, and then having a training on it or whatever it is, showing the guys that I'm holding up to my word of where I say that this company's going. And, getting fed by other people has been huge. I was just in New Jersey at a mastermind. I was at a mastermind in Tampa. Getting in front of as many people as possible that have already accomplished the things I wanted to accomplish has been the number one thing for me, because I know that if I'm not getting fed, I can't feed my team. So by far, Ed Milet has probably been the biggest one that I've listened to in regards to casting vision. I listen to his podcast religiously, and getting fed, getting mentorship, and having a clear vision and implementing action on that vision as soon as possible have been the biggest things for the vision, if that makes sense.
Okay. So other than Ed, like who are the mentors?
Well, I would say recently I've been getting close with Lance Bachman.
Say it again.
And Lance Bachman, he's in the roofing space. I don't have any mentors that are like calling me up every single day, but I'm constantly being fed by the YouTube mentors.
Sure.
There's so much content out there on YouTube. Andy Keys over in Orlando has Foxhaven Roofing Group. He puts out amazing content. Learning from people that are that next step ahead of me. When I was getting started, it was okay, learning from the person that started the roofing company. Now learning to get to 1 million. Now learning to get, then I learned from the person to get to 5 million. And now I'm learning from the person to get to 10. Now the next person is to get to 20. And, not looking at a $20 million company and getting confused with what I need to do as a $1 million company. Looking at what's the next step for me to grow. What are the stepping stones?
Sure. And you can't follow the $1 million guy to try to get to 20 because he hasn't done it. Yeah, for sure. Well, and obviously, I'm a big fan of finding the content on YouTube and using that to help you and develop you. That's the entire point of this podcast, right? So for us, I'm all in on, you don't have to be in front of these people and have conversations with them daily or even be paying them to teach you anything because there's content out there that you can navigate. Now, there's some value to having paid coaches and paid, mentorship because like what you said, it's the value of money faster, right? The speed of money gets you there faster if you help pay for some of those things to get you where you need to be. You can learn all this stuff. What we're doing is trying to provide value and nuggets where people can, pick something up and use and implement that to kind of learn how to navigate something. And so, but, if you had somebody that can actually see your blind spots and help you make those decisions and help show you and grow you that direction correctly, there's value there. So I'm all in on that, dude. I'm excited about that. What's the biggest thing you wish you had known to date before you started?
No, the day before I had started. Definitely underestimating, the how long it takes for an owner to get paid is for sure. Leaders eat last, and I've embodied that mindset. But in order to grow the company to the level I want to grow, it requires money. And the biggest thing is reinvesting into the company. I had to cut down my lifestyle from sales to owner. I was doing very well as a sales guy. I don't think I've made the money I was making as a sales guy in my first year as an owner. And it's not because I couldn't, it's because the money has to go back to feed the business and build the foundation. So definitely knowing, how long it takes to get paid as the owner and to get paid in a healthy way where it's not taking away from the growth of the company. I would say that would be number one.
What do you spend most of your time on as the owner now?
Now it's definitely incorporating as much technology that can cut down overhead and increase efficiency as possible. Looking into different, right now I'm honing in on my tech stack. What kind of technology can I implement early automations through my CRM right now, Job Nimbus, getting my boards clean and having automations that, when the job moves to permitting, it immediately sends an email to my permitting lady to pull a permit and record the NOC. When a job hits paid and closed, sending out an email to the homeowner asking for reviews and thanking them for their business. Doing those little things that are free and tedious, but once they're done, they're done. And they're going to add value. Correct.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to knock out all those things that I could do for as low money as possible that need to be done. Because I know as we scale and things begin to get bigger, it's going to be harder to go back and implement these processes. So
there's no doubt, right? It's so hard to pivot from what you were doing if you've gotten to a certain level. I mean, that's what they always say, right? It's harder to turn that ship. And that's true. So right now you're nimble enough to do that. So be nimble and do that. And obviously as a software company guy, I love hearing you go, I'm trying to hone in my tech stack. I'm like, yeah, great. I love that. And I think it's important that you do that because that's what's going to get you. I mean, truthfully, we all know that technology is going to be the driving force. I mean, you're even saying it. Me personally, I'm over 50. Some of that stuff is harder for me to implement than guys like you and Tyler that you've spoken with from our team. That it's easier for you guys to navigate some of that stuff and make it happen. And you're going to be able to be insanely successful because technology is putting all this at your fingertips to make you more successful faster and faster and faster. And take that and ride it. As long as you're not lazy and just trying to play video games all the time, right? There's that group. Yeah. There's that group too. And so, man, I'm all in on implementing a technology the best way you can to make that work and being successful in all of that. What's something about this business that just absolutely surprised you didn't see coming?
I as a sales guy, I was so in the weeds of the business. I would say what surprised me more was working with suppliers and understanding the pricing, understanding the bid wars between suppliers. I think the wool was for the first 6 to 8 months of the business. We did quite a bit of volume, and the wool was kind of put over my eyes in regards to what kind of pricing was available to us and how we could have increased profitability much earlier on. So I think working with the suppliers and definitely getting the working on our labor pricing, those are the two things I didn't know much of. I thought it was just set. This is it. you pay what they say you pay and that's it. So I was definitely think that working with suppliers was one of the biggest learning curves that I didn't expect.
Sure. So on your roofing side, currently you're mostly residential or mostly commercial?
Residential.
Mostly residential. Is that the target, or you want to stay there? You want to pivot to commercial? You want to do both? What's the trajectory right now on what your target market is?
Right now we're 90% insurance. Well, I would say right now we're about 70% insurance, 30% retail residential. Very small commercial, maybe 5% of our business has been commercial. And I want to definitely stay in the residential space. Right now, what we're doing is shifting more into a retail model, kind of getting away from the storm. And that was the original goal. But when you get hit by a massive hurricane at the start, it's business as usual. You're going to do what you know what to do. But by more that I'm learning in the industry and where Florida is going, especially in the insurance market, we need to have a strong retail team, and definitely the scaling up our marketing, our branding, building a brand so we can have a funnel of leads, and then the sales guys are ready to close at the right close rate. And then bringing in those leads and scaling from there. Is the retail market is definitely what we're focused on, and we want to be a retail residential contractor. And then as commercial comes, we'll take it on.
Sure.
But definitely the bread and butter is residential retail.
Well, get your legs under you faster too, right?
Yeah.
Legs under you, smaller projects to carry, not quite the overhead from the perspective of a large commercial. You're not doing draw schedules and all of that. I commend you on all of that. There's a lot of people that get wide-eyed, especially in a storm market, where they just start chasing everything and then they wind up burying themselves in things that they can't really handle. So kudos to you on, at least being aware and trying to find a market that works well and sticking with that for now. I think that's great. Has there been anything in the process that you wish you had done differently to this point?
Hindsight is 2020. I can't say there is anything right now that I can pinpoint that we've done differently. We had such exponential growth from when we started, more than expected. And I think as time goes on, I'll be able to look back and kind of pinpoint certain things. Honestly, I think things worked as they were supposed to.
Okay.
Like I said, when that storm hit, our whole plan was out the window. We had to resort to what we did, to what we knew what to do in that moment, and was sell roofs insurance, and we did. And, that fed us for 8 months straight. And then I would say I wish that I started building the brands, wrapping the trucks, and doing that early, as soon as possible. I do wish I did that.
Awareness, that brand awareness, Correct. That marketing side of it is huge and can be very valuable, especially in a storm chase, right? But, you do what you do, and that's all of us, right? When suddenly the lid comes off of everything and it's time to go to work, you just have to do what you have to do and make the most out of it. Typically, guys figure a lot of things out in that process. Like you learn, okay, well, I don't want to do that again. I messed that up. We should have done this differently. We need to make sure we're doing progress building on these projects as we go this direction, just to kind of keep everything coordinated and together where it needs to. But it sounds like you've done it well, man. It sounds like you're on top of what you need to be doing. And, I commend you for that.
Thank you.
If you were going to try to share some advice to somebody else that's trying to jump into roofing or restoration based off of what you've gone through, what would you recommend?
I would absolutely recommend that they put a plan together and they base their plan based off of their personal numbers. I would say to get really self-aware of where you're at. If you're a sales guy and you're looking to make the transition to owner, what are your numbers? If you're doing $1 million a year and in your first year, you can train 5 guys to be 80% as good as you, what is that number? 3.5 million. That might be an honest goal. Or if it's just going to be you don't have a lot of capital, maybe $1 million in your first year is a realistic goal. But what's going to be year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4? Set realistic expectations and get as knowledgeable as possible. Learn from everybody that did it right and learn from everybody that did it wrong. Look at the videos about the roofers that go out of business. Understand the numbers. Understanding that, a lot of money comes in and your bank account will lie to you about how much money you have. And understanding that you, as a leader, you're going to eat last in your company. And you in the beginning, I did it because of the money. But now I do it as a byproduct of the responsibility of the people in my office, the people I want to take care of, and the idea of building something great. And that the money is now just kind of a byproduct. So get very clear with the vision, have a plan of action, get the people in place that are necessary for you to grow. If there's a partner that can help you grow, absolutely get in business with him. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's what I would say to somebody that's looking to get into the space.
That's awesome, dude. I think you've hit some of those things. Like, clearly you've developed a lot as a leader through this process. And I think that shows just in your communication and your willingness to sacrifice yourself to help this other stuff happen. And hopefully your team sees that. And that comes out and you're conveying that to them, not necessarily, the whole pat on the back thing, but they're seeing what's taking place and what you're doing and what you're pushing for and what your vision is. And you're communicating that clearly enough to them that it puts you on a spot that they see it, they admire it, and then they, come alongside you. There's some loyalty that builds there when they know you're trying to do something to help them. Just remember that when you have somebody else that builds it up and you get another branch and somebody goes, hey, I'd love to be able to do this. I'd like to be a partner in the decision you make. Is the different or the same as the guy you were talking about makes? And you have to navigate those things. How do I make this work? But just keep pressing in. I'm grateful to have you on. We're at about 35 minutes right now. We kind of try to keep it right in that range. It's a great conversation, dude, and I appreciate your answers. Anything you have for me? Anything you want to say to me to end any of this? Or
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I listened to a couple of your episodes, and you add a lot of value. So I wish you all the success moving forward. I think this was a great conversation. I'm very thankful.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it, man. It's great having you on, and we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care.